Welcome to the Holiday Podcast, where we sit over homemade challah on Friday afternoons. I'm your host, Tammy Priest, a Jewish follower of Jesus, and it's great to be with you again today as we talk about intersections between the Old and New Covenants. So this summer, as I've been preparing for our women's Bible study in the fall, I've been reading very slowly through the Gospel of Mark, which I realize is pretty ironic because the word that pretty much characterizes Mark's gospel is the Greek word for immediately. Mark uses it 41 times in 16 chapters. 41 times. The other gospel writers, all combined, only use it 11 times in total. Anyway, Mark using this word so much really propels readers with a kind of a sense of urgency through the life and ministry of Jesus. And so it's kind of strange to force myself to read these passages really slowly, like 2 or 3 verses a day, sometimes only one. And then I pray through the verses in my journal, which is sometimes just praise, is kind of what it looks like. I just pray, sometimes asking God to help me love Him more deeply, to love others well, sometimes really practical things, just depending on the passage. And this past Wednesday, the morning after a difficult Tuesday, I read the passage in Mark about the paralyzed man being brought to Jesus by his friends. And I noticed something that I hadn't seen before, and it's really changed how I look at this moment. Let me read it. It's Mark chapter 2, verses 3 and 4. Some men came, bringing to him a paralyzed man, carried by 4 of them. Since they could not get him to Jesus because of the crowd, they made an opening in the roof above Jesus by digging through it, and then lowered the mat the man was lying on. Now, usually when people talk about this passage, we focus on the 4 friends, the determination and the faith of 4 people that moved Jesus to action. But when I read these verses this week, I noticed for the first time that while there may have been 4 people carrying this paralyzed man, they weren't the only ones bringing him to Jesus. Mark says some men came, 4 of them carried him, right? Which means that other friends were there just coming alongside to walk with him, to encourage him, letting him know that they were with him and that they were for him. And then some of them dug a hole through the roof big enough for those 4 stretcher bearers to lower the guy still on his mat down into the house. So this was a determined group of friends. So Wednesday morning, when I saw this passage in view of the larger group in mind, not just the 4, Mark's words spoke so much more to me about community and friendship. This man had friends who carried him, others who came alongside him, and some who broke down the barrier between him and Jesus. And that is what community is all about. Sometimes we need people to carry us when we cannot take a single step, to bear our burdens with us or for us, to take over sometimes in really practical ways when we're paralyzed by life's events, physically, emotionally, relationally. And other friends come alongside in prayer, in words of encouragement, or simply in silence, sitting with us in our woundedness. And then there are also other people who see the obstacles in front of us and they do something about it. Things we don't have the strength or the tools or the connections to do in that situation, and things that maybe the other friends can't do either. And we're called then to be all of these different kinds of friends too, different roles with different people in different seasons. But I want to go back to something else about these friends, these people that really spoke to me. So in first century culture, you may know it was assumed that if someone had some debilitating condition, it was the result of sin. Like when the disciples asked Jesus whose sin was responsible for the blind man's blindness, remember? That's in John 9. They asked, was it his sin or his parents'? This was the man that people recognized later as the guy who was always outside begging. But these friends in Mark didn't care about placing blame or shame on this person in their lives. And they didn't pray for him from a distance. They didn't even just go to Jesus and ask him to come back privately to heal this person. They weren't ashamed to come alongside this person they cared about and make a spectacle of themselves in the process. And this makes me think about the other paralyzed man in the Gospels, the one who laid by the pool of Bethesda all day, every day, for decades, trying to drag himself to the water for some mystical healing. Totally alone, no one carrying him to Jesus. And it really gets to me thinking about how desperately alone he was until Jesus came and looked him in the eyes, and he spoke to him, and he listened to him, and then he healed him. Even when no one else will help, or no one else can help, Jesus is all of these Mark II friends, all at once, all the time, perfectly. Because of the Messiah's incarnation and his crucifixion and his resurrection and then his ascension, he is always coming alongside us. He carries us when we don't have an ounce of strength, whether it's spiritual or emotional or relational or whatever, and he has broken down every single wall within us and between us and God. And he takes away shame instead of piling it on. And so as we sit here on this holiday, the Sabbath Eve, I really pray that we will take some time to be thankful for the people who've carried us and come alongside us and been an advocate for us. And that we'd ask God to help us be those things for others, that we'd be unashamed to enter into people's brokenness. And especially as we enter into this time of rest, that we take time to meditate in thanksgiving and praise for the way our Messiah chose to come alongside us in our brokenness, that he chose to carry and bear all of our burdens, that he chose to break down every wall between us and the Father and between all of us here. That is the beginning of true shalom, true peace. And so I wish you, my friends, a Shabbat Shalom